Welcome back, Red Ice members. Thank you for tuning in. This is our second segment as we continue our program with Michael Tsarion. We are going to dive into it right away and talk more about astrotheology and sidereal mythology and all the surrounding topics that connects with this. I want to begin this segment here to talk a little bit about the Hyksos, the all-prevailing Hyksos. They keep coming up all over the place, and many roads, so to speak, seems to be leading towards this specific people. In your opinion, Michael, the Hyksos pharaohs, the Israelites and the Judites of the Bible, were they in fact the Scythians? Tell us a little bit about this and your theory.
Well, that's right. This is what I went into a great deal in the Irish Origins book, is that, of course, it's been a big bone of contention who the Hyksos pharaohs really were. People have a problem trying to confirm whether they were native to Egypt always, or whether they invaded from outside. Scholars fall on either side. Some believe that they were invaders from outside, and some believe no. I mean, Ralph Ellis is the one who sort of speculates that, hey, maybe they were always native Egyptians, and that what outside meant is it just outside of Upper Egypt, that's all. Meaning outside, but still within Egypt.
Yes.
So that would have been like the Scots are still part of Britain, but they're outside England, that kind of thing.
Yes.
So again, that's kind of interesting. I do believe that they were from outside, or at least were connected very deeply with the Scythians, who would have been from outside, if you want to call that. But see, there's also a possibility that the Scythians were native to Egypt, in the pre-dynastic times. So it all comes out in the wash. Yeah, even if the Hyksos turn out to be connected, as I think they were, to the Scythians, there's evidence that the Scythians, there were Scythian cities, on the Nile from an early period. So again, it's hard to say. We certainly know that there was Phoenician cities that were in pre-dynastic times, and that even Avaris and Memphis may have been built over ancient Phoenician cities. And this brings up a tremendous importance, because I believe that the Phoenicians, originally hailed from like Britain and Scandinavia, so there's that whole Irish connection again.
Yes.
Right from the connection with the Phoenicians. But see, the Scythians to me are one of the most fascinating of all peoples, and it's amazing to me how scholars always avoid talking about them. And I found out the reason. The reason why they don't want to talk about the Scythians is exactly the same reason why they don't want to talk about the ancient Arya, because to do so would open up evidence for the west to east migration of the elements of civilization.
Yes.
So I talk about them because, for that very reason, to study the Scythians and their movement is always to confirm then, that the elements of civilization were taken west. So this is why scholars, even though, they do find these Scythians intriguing, and you'll find little sentences or paragraphs here and there, ultimately they steer well away from it, because it's taboo. Taboo to the Vatican, taboo to the establishment, taboo to Egyptologists. And so what they'd rather let us do is hang there wondering about the Hyksos and where could these people have come from? Were they Indians? Were they Nubians? Were they Hittites or whatever? And every theory they chase down turns to, just like quicksand. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Ralph Ellis comes the closest, but he still, refuses to accept that they were Scythians, or at least he doesn't explore that. He talks about them being Cretans, perhaps. There was some very, very paltry evidence showing that they may be connected to the Cretans from the island of Crete. There may even be a connection to people that the Bible refers to as Philistines. Although when you really look into the matter of the Philistines, you find out that they probably were Cretans, there's evidence, there's really good evidence for that they were connected to a group called the Amorites.
Okay.
That the Amorites of Syria might have been the Hyksos, but much stronger than that for me is this connection to the Scythians. But don't forget, the Scythians, are technically Celtic.
Well, exactly, because, we could say, I guess, that these Scythians lived in Europe, but only because that, they were displaced from Ireland, Britain, and Scandinavia because of the cataclysm, and this consequently brought them down into the regions of Egypt and Middle East, Persia, correct?
Well, this is what my book goes into, and that is that any of these groups that when normal history picks up to identify these groups, you can't just simply assume that the territory that, history acknowledges that these people inhabited is their original habitat.
Right.
This is preposterous to do so. These people were not just nomadic or horseback riding or whatever. They were remnants of an unbelievable upheaval from nature that literally, you can imagine just the whole continent tipping up and everyone having to flee, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Britain was made naked, Scandinavia was made naked, was destroyed, utterly rent, as you can read in the Edda. I mean, people only have to pick up the Norse Edda, and the whole thing is full of fire and brimstone and gods and thunderbolts, you see, and the wreck of and ruin of the world.
Yeah.
So it's in the mythologies. Well, people just don't sit there and, continue in a situation like that. They have to flee. And I believe this happened with the Scythians, that these people took to horseback, became sort of semi-nomadic, did move into the steppes of Russia and into the north, into Anatolia, into what's known as Turkey today, because they were being displaced from further west. This is the piece that is so critical, that is never brought to light. Second part that needs to be suppressed, and which has been suppressed, is that the Scythians didn't stay there. They moved as far as the Indus Valley in India and Pakistan. They moved south into Palestine, into Galilee, and into Egypt. Mm-hmm. These are the pieces of the puzzle that are simply, so taboo. But see, the Irish records tell you this happened. The Scythians are mentioned in the early Irish records, and the whole, it's fragmentary, but we can find out from the Irish records that the Scythians spent time in Egypt exactly around the time of Akhenaten, that we now know was the time of Akhenaten.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. Now, so this picks up the whole story, you see. Now, the Eastern Scythians were known as Mesagete, which the word get means goat.
Yeah.
That means that these people were Goths. These were Nordics. These were people who were, the goat men. And you find this all over Europe. You find the Utaeans. There's a group called the Ute, because the G becomes a Y sometimes. Some vowels and consonants change.
Yes, yes.
In Denmark, you've got the Jutes, or the Jute, right? The Jutes of Denmark. Yeah.
That's
you can look this up.
Probably same as you said. It probably sounds very much as the Gotar or Goeths or Geeths,
Same thing.
Yeah.
You have the Jat Sikhs. Anyone listening to this program is from India, is a Sikh, knows that the highest caste of the Sikhs is called Jat. Where did that word come from? Don't they know that is a Western word that represented the Goths, the goat men?
Yeah.
In China, you have the Yuezhi, right? The Yuezhi,
yeah.
Right? But this carries in even to people that are well known. These groups, some of them are well known, others not so well known. But when we're talking Phrygians, when we're talking Achaeans, see, Achaean, you only have to put the S on the front to get Sakaean. And Saka was the ancient name of what? The Scythians, man. The Scythians weren't called Scythians in their day. They knew themselves as the Saka or the Saga. This is a word root where we get words like sacred from, or sage, the sages, the magi. Yeah.
And isn't it something about, I'm thinking about Saka as the spear men, but there's a rebuttal or refutal of that as well. Is that right, or am I wrong here?
Yeah. Normally, when you talk about the Scythians, it's the same old lie, They always say that the word, I think Gothic, meant those who carry water or some nonsense. The Scythians was men of the spears. It's absolute nonsense. The word root saga, actually is a corruption of a word that meant the stag.
Right, yes.
So they were the goat men, they were the stag men. And see, like I said, the old forest god, the most ancient forest god, had, horns, the antlers. Those horns, and if you come to my work, you'll see pictures of this, and we can put pictures up on the website, the Red Ice thing, so people can check this out for themselves.
Indeed.
The horns of the stag god was the original crown of thorns that you find Jesus of later ages, they refer to him having the crown of thorns.
Yeah.
But in your mind's eye, you have to see what's being said there, is that Jesus hanging on the cross is nothing more than the old replication of the Druidic Isis hanging on the cruciform tree. The Druids would have a cruciform tree and pictorialize their god of the earth hanging on it, and the crown of thorns or the crown of roses. But the crown of thorns originally represented the earth god Hern, that was picked up by the Greeks to make Hermes.
Right.
Who is the Egyptian Thoth, who is the Roman Mercury. And isn't the standard of the Roman Mercury serpentine?
Yeah.
The famous caduceus that everybody sees on the medical,
right?
And the symbols of Mercury. Well, that serpent, you're seeing a Grecianized, Latinized imagery. That comes from the old Celtic Irish forest god, that so many other gods are based on. This is the true story here. And the word root Saka turns up in words like Isaac in the Bible.
Mm.
Because I believe, you see, that the so-called original, like we've been talking, who were the Hyksos? Who were the original Israelites? I believe they were connected to the Scythians, and one of the early Israelites was called Isaac, right? Abraham, Isaac.
Indeed.
Jacob, okay?
Yeah.
Well, Isaac leaps out at you because it's Ish-Sak. In Hebrew, Ish is man.
Yes.
And Saka, as we're saying, is Scythian.
Ah. Huh.
So there's no question in my mind. It's stuff like this, you see.
Yeah.
And it's the symbolism of the astrological symbolism that surrounds the tribes. That Ish-Sak means little more than Scythian, man of the Magi, man who is from the west.
Yes. And you know, I don't know if this needs to be emphasized or what have you, but again, I think it's important to mention it. I mean, this isn't about, you know, that, you know, being you know, the best of you know, people or what have you in that regard, that this is all, you know, propping up one people above the others in that sense. This is more about pinpointing and finding out where the origins of the civilization actually takes place, as the, you know, books of you know, as one of the titles of your books is, of course, that this is about the origins of civilization, that this, again, so many people are falling off when it comes to mentioning the word area, and they instantly get into this, you know, oh, this is a racist thing, this is because they're indoctrinated about this. But again, we could just mention that and emphasize that at this point, that this is about finding out, you know, who were the originators of the system that we now can see around us. Am I correct, Michael?
Yes, and you have to add to that we need a memorial, a tombstone to these originally morally superior people, because there are no Arya in the world. The point needs to be made crucially, exactly what you're saying, and to underline it, is that we're not talking about a species that lives today.
Right.
All these people were massacred. What my work is about is saying I'll not allow those destroyers to be using those terms as if they are the moral aristocracy.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the word aristocracy contains Ari, the same old word root for the Arya, right?
Yes, there you go.
But the people that are running around in this world today, who think of themselves, and I would love you to think of themselves, as aristocracy, the oligarchy, they are not the oligarchy. They're the mass murderers, so the work is justified. My work is justified because at least these guys, the original, are dead. Nothing can be done about that. But I'm not going to allow false, sick, sorcerers to dance on the graves of these ancients and then claim that they are that. So this is the motive. This is the importance.
Indeed.
This is of crucial importance.
Indeed. Okay, and let's see here. We were talking about the different names, of course. Saka as the Scythians, the connection to Isaac. What about the name of Israel or Israelite? Tell us about that.
Well, again, in my reading, this word Saka turns up in Saxon. We use the X, Saxon, but originally that word meant Ishakson, or it actually represents the Sakason, the people who are of the Saka.
Right.
So the Anglo-Saxons, right, who are always claiming that they come from the Teutonics and whatnot,
mm-hmm.
the Teutons were a tribe, a Germanic version, a Western version of the Scythians. So it's the same big group. This is what they have tried to fool you by making up all of these terms. Terms like Celtic, which are now being dropped wholesale because it's so spurious. All sorts of terms that have been put in there by the historians to confuse the hell out of all of us.
Yes.
Names have been made into titles and so on. But you're right, Israel is the same story. Ishrael is nothing more than the Is from the Isus, which is the old Gaelic, Celtic, Irish god of the forest, right?
Yes,
Isus.
yes.
But as I'm telling you, that these individuals from the West were cohabitating as far off as Indus Valley, and they certainly were confederates and colleagues of those in Egypt. Now, what is the famous equal god, the one who is exactly identical to the sun gods of the West in Egypt, is known as Ra, Amen-Ra.
Yes, yes.
So the Druids